My name is Jessica Connon. I'm 34, and I never thought the deepest cut would come from inside my own family. I discovered my husband wasn't just betraying me with another woman, he was betraying me with my cousin. What you're about to hear isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of cold, calculated revenge. I'm sharing it with you because no one should ever be blindsided the way I was. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss stories like this. I didn't wait until dessert. The plates were still clinking, wine still being poured, when I stood from the long oak table in my mother's dining room. The air smelled of rosemary chicken and buttered rolls, but all I could taste was the bitterness on my tongue. My family's laughter rose around me, a chorus of voices I had grown up with, voices that once meant safety. Now they sounded hollow, brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Everyone turned when my chair scraped back. My husband, Daniel, looked up from his plate, smiling the way he always did when he wanted to appear in control. My cousin, Leah, shifted uncomfortably, her hand tightening around her wine glass. Her face flushed, not from alcohol, from fear. She knew. I saw it in her eyes. For weeks, I'd rehearsed this moment in my head. Every word, every beat, every pause. The timing had to be perfect. Revenge isn't fire, it's ice. You don't rush. You freeze the scene until everyone is locked in place, then you strike. I cleared my throat, and the room fell silent. Before we go any further, I said, my voice even, cold enough to still the air. There's something I need to share. A murmur ran through the table. My mother furrowed her brows. My brother leaned forward, fork halfway to his mouth. Daniel chuckled lightly, that patronizing laugh he used when he wanted to smooth things over. Jess, he said, using the nickname only he was allowed to. Whatever it is, can it wait? Leah's hand trembled against the stem of her glass. She tried to keep her face neutral, but I watched a bead of sweat slide along her temple, disappearing into the curve of her hairline. No, I said. It can't. I reached into my bag, slow, deliberate, drawing out a single folded paper. My pulse didn't race. I'd trained it not to. Weeks of holding it all inside, weeks of planning this exact second. By now, calm was a weapon. This, I said, unfolding the sheet, belongs to Daniel. At least, it was addressed to him. But somehow, Leah's name ended up on the hotel reservation. A sharp inhale from my aunt. The sound of a fork clattering against porcelain. Daniel froze, his practiced smirk cracking just slightly at the corners. Leah's lips parted, but no sound came out. I didn't slam the evidence on the table. That would have been too theatrical. Instead, I laid it down gently, right beside the breadbasket, like it was nothing more than another napkin. Jessica, Daniel started, voice lower now, urgent. But I cut him off with a raised hand. Not yet. You've had plenty of time to talk. Tonight it's my turn. The silence stretched so tight I could feel it pressing against my chest. Eyes darted from me, to Daniel, to Leah, then back to me. My mother's hand hovered near her lips, trembling. My brother muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. I let them stew in it. Silence is sharper than any blade. Family? I said finally, scanning the faces around me. It's supposed to mean loyalty, trust, safety, but sometimes family hides knives where hugs should be. My eyes locked on Leah. Isn't that right, cousin? Leah flinched as if I'd slapped her. Her face drained of color, then flushed red again in waves. She opened her mouth, then shut it. Her throat bobbed, struggling against words she couldn't form. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low, almost a growl. Enough. Jessica, you're making a scene. I smiled, cold, measured. That's the idea. The weight of the room pressed harder now. My mother whispered Leah's name, but Leah didn't look at her. Couldn't. Her eyes stayed locked on me, wide and pleading, begging me not to speak the next line. But I did. I know everything. The words dropped into the silence like stones into water. sending ripples through every pair of eyes at the table. My aunt gasped. My brother swore. My mother's chair creaked as she sank back, stunned. Leah's hands shook so violently her wine sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth crimson. Daniel grabbed her wrist under the table, a subtle warning. Don't crack. Don't fold. Too late. She was already breaking. I could have ended it right there. I could have laid out the photos, the texts, the receipts, the proof stacked higher than the bread rolls on the table. But revenge isn't about speed. It's about savoring every second your enemies realize the walls are closing in. So I leaned back in my chair, crossing one leg over the other. Calm, controlled, watching. Eat, I said softly, almost tender. Don't let the food get cold. No one moved. Forks hovered midair, glasses frozen halfway to lips. Daniel's eyes bored into mine, a silent command to stop. Leah couldn't breathe without shaking. I smiled again, but this time it wasn't for them. It was for me, because this was only the beginning. The table sat in suffocating silence. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to echo, pounding against the walls. My mother finally found her voice. "Jessica," she whispered. "What are you saying?" I looked at her, then back at the evidence lying between the bread and butter like an uninvited guest. "I'm saying the truth is uglier than any of you want to believe. And tonight, we're all going to look it in the eye." Daniel pushed back his chair suddenly, the legs screeching against the hardwood. "Enough." His voice cracked louder this time, a desperate bark more than authority. "This is not the place." But I shook my head slowly. "Oh, Daniel, this is exactly the place." Leah's breathing came fast and shallow. Her lips quivered as if she were about to speak, to confess. But Daniel's grip tightened under the table, silencing her. His jaw was clenched, eyes wild, scanning the room for an escape he couldn't find. I wanted him trapped. I wanted her cornered. And I had both, because tonight wasn't about accusation. Tonight was about spectacle. The kind that scars reputations forever. The kind that turns family into witnesses and accomplices. The kind you can't recover from. And the best part? They still didn't know how much I really had. I tapped the folded paper lightly, my finger brushing against the ink. "This is nothing," I said, my voice low but carrying across the room. "Just a taste." Leah's face crumpled, panic replacing pretense. Daniel's mask slipped again, anger boiling to the surface. The family sat frozen, their world tilting, their foundations cracking. And me? I sat in the middle of it all, calm as winter, watching them drown in the silence. This was step one. The knife was in, and I hadn't even twisted it yet. Before the storm, there was peace, or at least what I thought was peace. My life with Daniel looked picture-perfect to anyone on the outside. We had a 2-story home with blue shutters and a white porch in a quiet Salt Lake City neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors waved while watering their lawns, where kids rode bikes until dusk, where barbecues meant everyone brought too much food and left with leftovers wrapped in foil. Stability, that's what it looked like. That's what I believed I had built. Every morning I brewed coffee before work. Daniel liked it strong, with just a dash of cream. He always left his mug on the counter when he was done, never in the sink. That used to annoy me, but over time it became a kind of ritual, me finding his cup, rinsing it, setting it out again for the next day. That's what marriage is, right? Little irritations you forgive because love makes them small. At night, we'd eat dinner together at the worn wooden table that had been in my family for years. Sometimes we talked about our days. Sometimes we watched TV in silence, side by side. He'd rest his hand absent-mindedly on mine, and I thought it meant comfort. Now I know it meant distraction, a move to keep me steady, keep me blind. Leah, my cousin, was part of this world too. She lived just 15 minutes away, in a smaller house she was renting after her divorce. We'd grown up like sisters, sharing secrets and sneaking out to meet boys we never had the nerve to actually kiss. My mother always said I had 2 shadows. my own, and Leah trailing behind. It felt true. She was at every holiday, every birthday, every summer barbecue. When I married Daniel, she stood by my side as a bridesmaid, smiling like my happiness was hers. I believed her. Daniel liked her too, or so I thought. He said she had a good sense of humor, that she lightened up family dinners when things got tense. I never thought twice about the way she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, or how her hand would brush his shoulder when she passed behind his chair. Why would I? She was family. And family to me meant safety. I worked part-time at a local design firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and I liked the balance. Daniel worked in real estate. His schedule was unpredictable: evening showings, weekend open houses. He always said the late nights were just part of the hustle. And I believed him. When he came home tired, I rubbed his shoulders. When he said he needed to take a client call after hours, I lowered the TV volume. That's who I was: supportive, patient, willing to sacrifice comfort for the man I thought was building our future. I even put my own dream on hold. I wanted to open a boutique downtown, a mix of home goods and clothing, something that carried a little of my grandmother's charm. Daniel told me to wait. He said we should be financially smart first. He promised, "Give me a couple more years to stabilize everything, and then it'll be your turn." I swallowed the disappointment because I trusted him. Trust. That was the ordinary world I lived in. A world built on it. But trust is a fragile currency. The first crack was small, almost laughable. Daniel came home one night smelling of a perfume I didn't wear. Sweet, sharp, and expensive. I teased him about it, said maybe one of his clients hugged him too closely at a showing. He laughed and said I was imagining things. And because I didn't want to be the paranoid wife, I let it go. Then came the dinners. He claimed he had to meet investors, clients, sometimes even other agents. He'd text Leah that he couldn't make it to Sunday lunch, ask her to keep me company while he worked. She'd show up with a bottle of wine and stories about her latest dates that went nowhere. We'd laugh, pour another glass, and toast to bad men. I never realized the worst one was sitting across the table from me every night. I started noticing how often Daniel and Leah exchanged glances. Quick, fleeting, but sharp enough to cut if you paid attention. I didn't. Or maybe I refused to. My cousin was hurting, freshly divorced. My husband was hardworking, exhausted. Of course they'd lean on each other, I told myself. Of course they'd understand each other in ways I couldn't. That's the cruelest part about betrayal. How normal it looks until the mask slips. One memory sticks in me like a splinter. We were at my mother's house for Thanksgiving. The table was crowded, kids running underfoot, the smell of turkey filling every corner. I went into the kitchen to grab more wine glasses, and when I came back, I caught Leah's hand resting on Daniel's knee under the table. It was quick, a blink, and it was gone. They both laughed at something my brother said, acting like nothing had happened. I froze, standing in the doorway, my chest tightening. My mind scrambled for excuses. Maybe she leaned too far, maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was innocent. But a pit formed in my stomach that never left after that. That was the start of the end. The ordinary world didn't shatter that night, not completely. But the crack spread, hairline at first, widening with every unexplained late night, every strange look, every slip of Leah's tongue when she said we instead of he. I tried to push it down. I tried to be the woman I always was, forgiving, trusting, patient. But suspicion has a way of rotting you from the inside out. Every smile from Leah looked faker. Every excuse from Daniel sounded thinner. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe beside me, wondering whose name he whispered when he dreamed. The worst part? I still loved him. I still loved her. That's what betrayal feeds on. Love. Without it, the blade wouldn't cut so deep. I held on to hope longer than I should have. I told myself it was stress, bad timing, too much work. I told myself family doesn't do this, that blood means loyalty. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And when I finally uncovered it, when I finally pulled the mask off and saw their faces for what they were, the grief was unbearable. Grief turned into rage, rage into clarity. Because in that moment, I understood. They hadn't just taken my trust. They had taken my world, and no one takes from me without paying. The truth doesn't hit like a car crash. It creeps, slow, silent, until it's everywhere, and you can't breathe without choking on it. For me, the moment of betrayal wasn't a single explosion. It was a series of cracks that finally broke the dam. It started with Leah's phone. We'd been at her place one Saturday afternoon, just the two of us. She poured wine, told stories about dating apps, men who ghosted, men who lied. I laughed when she laughed, nodded when she shook her head. That was our rhythm. She vented, I listened. But when she went to the bathroom, she left her phone on the couch. The screen lit up. I wasn't snooping. I didn't reach for it. The message just appeared. A preview glowing in the dim light of the living room. Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish I could sneak away again tonight. D. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. Daniel. At first I told myself it was someone else. There are plenty of men with names that start with D. But Leah didn't have many friends. She didn't have many secrets from me. My mind clamped down, desperate to explain it away. She came back from the bathroom, sat down, picked up the phone, and saw me looking. Her thumb hovered over the screen, eyes flicking to mine for just a split second too long. She smiled, wide, fake, and flipped the phone face down. That smile confirmed everything, but I didn't say a word. Silence became my weapon. I started watching them more closely after that. Daniel's phone always glued to his hand, his late nights piling up. Leah's sudden disappearances, excuses that sounded like echoes of his. Work ran late. I'm helping a friend. You wouldn't understand. The lies overlapped like rehearsed lines from a bad play. And then came the receipt. Daniel had gone out of town for a conference in Denver. He kissed me goodbye at the door, suitcase in hand, promising to call every night. I found the hotel receipt 2 days later, tucked in his jacket pocket like a forgotten bookmark. Room for two. Dates that matched, and the name Leah Conan printed neatly beneath his own. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the slip of paper like it was poison. My pulse roared in my ears. There it was. Proof. Not suspicion, not whispers in the dark. Evidence. The betrayal had a face now. 2 faces. I thought I'd cry. I thought I'd scream. But instead, I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that startled even me. It wasn't hysteria. It was clarity. Because in that moment, everything rearranged itself. The world shifted. The ordinary life I clung to. The coffee mugs, the dinners, the cousin who was my shadow. It all shattered. And what replaced it wasn't grief. It was calculation. I didn't confront them right away. That would have been too easy, too merciful. I wanted to see how deep the rot went. I wanted to know how far they'd sink while looking me in the eye, smiling, pretending nothing was wrong. So I watched. When Daniel came back from Denver, he wrapped me in a hug, kissed my cheek, and said, "I missed you." His hands were warm, his eyes steady, a performance polished to perfection. I smiled back, tucked the receipt deeper into my pocket, and whispered, "I missed you too." Leah visited the next week. She brought me flowers, yellow lilies, my favorite. She hugged me tightly, her perfume strong, her heart beating too fast. I wondered if Daniel's scent was still on her skin. "Rough week," she said, sinking into my couch. "Men are exhausting." I almost laughed again. Men are exhausting. She meant my husband. That night, I lay in bed beside Daniel, his arm draped over me. I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster, and thought about knives hidden in hugs. That's what betrayal feels like. A blade pressed against your ribs while the betrayer whispers love in your ear. The dam burst 2 weeks later. I was driving home from work when I saw them. A red sedan pulled into the back lot of a hotel on the edge of town. I knew that car. Daniel's. My stomach flipped as I slowed at the intersection, headlights catching him stepping out. Leah was right behind him, laughing at something he said. Her hand brushed his arm. He leaned down, kissed her cheek, then her mouth. Not passion, familiarity. They disappeared inside together. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Horns blared behind me, someone shouting for me to move. But all I could see was their bodies slipping through those glass doors like they belonged there, like they'd done it 100 times. That was the moment. The death of trust. The final nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. I drove home in silence. No music. No tears. Just the hum of the engine and the steady beat of something new inside me. Not grief, not rage. Resolve. When Daniel walked through the door later that night, tie loosened, shirt untucked, he kissed my forehead and said, "Sorry I'm late, babe. Client dinner ran long." I smiled up at him, handed him a plate of reheated pasta, and said, "Of course, I understand." Leah texted me the next morning. "Lunch this week? Just us girls?" I typed back, "Can't wait." And that's when the plan began forming. Because betrayal doesn't end with discovery. It begins there. The moment you see the knife, you have a choice. Pull it out and bleed, or grip the handle and drive it back where it came from. I chose the latter. But before revenge, there had to be patience. A hunter doesn't rush. She waits. She studies. She learns the habits of her prey until the kill is inevitable. So I played the wife. I played the cousin. I played the fool. And while they thought I was blind, I was memorizing every move they made, every lie, every touch, every secret. I held them all in silence, waiting for the day I would lay them bare. The betrayal had carved me open, but instead of bleeding out, I filled the wound with ice. And when the time came, I'd make sure Daniel and Leah felt the cold cut deeper than I ever had. The night I saw them walk into that hotel, something in me died, but something else was born. Grief burned away, leaving steel. I realized I had two options: collapse or calculate. And collapsing had never suited me. For days, I moved like a ghost through the house, silent but sharp, watching Daniel from behind the mask of a loyal wife. He kissed me goodbye every morning, his lips warm but empty. He texted me during the day, calling me love, baby, sweetheart. I replied with the same words, but inside I was dissecting them, stripping them down to the nothingness they were. Leah still visited, still played her part as my cousin confidant. She brought me takeout, we watched movies together, and she rested her head on my shoulder like we were children again. If anyone else had seen us, they'd think we were inseparable. Sisters. Blood thicker than water. But water drowns too. It was one night at dinner when the decision crystallized. Daniel was cutting into his steak, talking about a new real estate deal. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who thought he was untouchable. Leah had texted me earlier, asking if I wanted to grab coffee the next day. I stared at the two messages stacked in my phone. My husband's words, my cousin's words. Together, they formed the script of my humiliation. And then it hit me. They weren't just betraying me. They were laughing at me. Every lie told with a straight face, every touch exchanged under my nose, every excuse thrown my way. It was a performance, and I was their audience. That's when the shift happened. I looked at Daniel across the table, knife glinting in his hand as he sliced his meat. My reflection stared back at me in the blade. And I thought, no more. I wouldn't cry in silence. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't confront them in some tear-stained scene they could twist back on me, painting me as hysterical, unstable. That's what they wanted, for me to break so they could justify their betrayal. Instead, I'd break them. Not with screams, not with violence, but with exposure. Because the only thing Daniel valued more than his ego was his reputation. And the only thing Leah wanted more than love was acceptance. If I took both from them, they'd have nothing left. The decision came in a rush, and yet it felt inevitable, like it had been waiting for me all along. I pictured the reveal, the shock on their faces when the mask was ripped away, the silence in the room as everyone realized what they'd done. I wanted witnesses. I wanted family. I wanted their shame to be permanent, branded into memory. I put my fork down, folded my napkin neatly, and smiled across the table. "This is delicious," I said softly. Daniel grinned, pleased with himself. "Glad you like it." Inside, I was already drafting his downfall. That night, while he showered, I unlocked his phone. I'd watched him type his code for years, never needing it, until now. My hands didn't even tremble as I scrolled through messages. There it was. Conversations with Leah, hidden under a fake name. The words weren't poetic or sweet. They were cheap, hurried arrangements. "Meet me at 7. Same place. Don't forget to delete this." I screenshotted everything, sent it to myself, then deleted the trail. Evidence. The first tool in my arsenal. The next day, I drove past the hotel they frequented. Same car in the lot, same room reserved. I asked at the front desk for a receipt under Daniel's name. The clerk handed it over without question. Another piece of the puzzle. At home, I started a folder. Not on my computer. Too easy to trace. A physical folder, thick paper, ink that couldn't be erased. Every text, every receipt, every note went inside. Proof layered upon proof. It wasn't enough to know they betrayed me. I needed to prove it. To everyone. And I wasn't rushing. That was the beauty of it. They thought I was blind, but I was wide awake. They thought they were predators, but they were prey fattening themselves for slaughter. The decision was no longer just about revenge. It was about balance. They had tilted the scales with their betrayal. I would correct them with exposure. Leah texted again that week. "Movie night." I said yes. She showed up in sweatpants, hair tied back, holding popcorn. We laughed at a stupid comedy, drank wine, and when she fell asleep on the couch beside me, I studied her face. This was the woman I grew up with. The cousin who knew my secrets. The one person I swore I'd protect like a sister. Now she was the reason I was sharpening knives in silence. I realized something as I watched her sleep. Revenge wasn't just a choice. It was survival. Because if I let them win, if I let them walk all over me and keep their secret, then I was dead already. So I made my choice. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. From that moment forward, every word I spoke to Daniel and Leah was calculated. Every smile was a mask. Every question was bait. I wasn't their audience anymore. I was the author, writing the story of their destruction. And they didn't even know it. Once the decision was made, the rest became strategy. I treated it like a project at work. Timelines, evidence, contingencies. Except this wasn't about profit. It was about demolition. The first step was information. I already had texts and receipts, but I needed more. Not just enough to accuse, enough to annihilate. Daniel was careful, but not careful enough. He thought deleting messages made them disappear. He forgot about synced backups. A few late nights, while he slept with his phone charging beside him, I pulled everything. Screenshots. Bank statements showing hotel charges masked as business expenses. Even a shared Dropbox folder where he saved property documents, and, hidden inside, photos of Leah in hotel rooms. I printed everything. Tangible. Unstoppable. Paper doesn't vanish when you press delete. Then came the timing. Exposing them one-on-one would have been a release for me, but an escape for them. They'd deny, spin, convince others I was bitter or crazy. No. Their ruin needed an audience. It had to happen where family gathered, where Daniel's charm and Leah's innocence carried the most weight. A place where their masks would shatter in front of witnesses who'd never forget. My mother's upcoming Sunday dinner was perfect. She always insisted on full attendance. Daniel never skipped those. Leah never missed either. A family table was where their betrayal would meet its mirror, public, undeniable humiliation. Still, I needed to sharpen the knife before swinging it. So I baited them. One evening, I asked Daniel about his conferences. He didn't flinch. He told me all about networking, dinners with agents, late-night strategy sessions. His voice smooth, rehearsed. I nodded, asked innocent questions, and tucked his answers away like arrows in a quiver. The more detail he gave me, the easier it would be to expose his lies later. Leah was softer, easier to crack. Over coffee, I asked how her love life was going. She sighed dramatically, told me about men who didn't commit, who only wanted one thing. Her words dripped irony. I sipped my latte and kept my face neutral, while inside I was cataloging every syllable for later. Every conversation was reconnaissance. Every smile I gave them was camouflage. The second step was control. If you want to destroy someone, you don't just expose them. You make sure they can't recover. That meant positioning myself as the victim who held all the moral ground. I spent more time with my family, helping my mother with errands, calling my brother more often. I made sure everyone saw me as steady, devoted, loving. That way, when the explosion came, there would be no doubt who the guilty ones were. At the same time, I began isolating Daniel and Leah without them realizing it. When Leah invited me out, I declined more often. When Daniel suggested we travel, I made excuses. Slowly, I created distance so their downfall would feel sharper, like the floor dropping out beneath them. The third step was the reveal itself. I pictured it over and over: the long table, the clinking glasses, the smell of roasted chicken. My mother at one end, Daniel at the other, Leah pretending to be family, and me, in the center, holding their destruction in my hands. But one mistake could ruin everything. If they suspected, they'd run. If I tipped my hand too early, they'd rewrite the story, turn family against me. That's why I moved carefully, like a chess player. One calculated move at a time. There were close calls. One night, while Daniel showered, I nearly got caught scrolling through his email. The water shut off, the curtain rings rattled, and I shoved his phone under the pillow just as he walked into the bedroom. He smiled, kissed my shoulder, and I smiled back, hiding the hammering of my heart. Another time, Leah dropped her phone while we were at the farmer's market. I saw Daniel's name flash on the screen, not as Daniel, but as D. Miller. A pathetic disguise. She snatched it up so fast she nearly knocked over a display of apples. Her laugh was forced, shaky. "Work stuff," she muttered. I pretended not to notice. That was my weapon, pretending. Weeks passed, and the folder grew thicker. By the time Sunday dinner approached, I had everything I needed. Hotel bills, photos, text transcripts, even voicemail messages where Daniel's voice whispered promises no husband should ever make to another woman, let alone my cousin. The plan was ready. But it wasn't just about catching them. It was about timing the cut so deep it couldn't heal. That meant waiting for the perfect moment at that dinner, when the whole family was at ease, smiling, talking, when Daniel thought he was in control. When Leah thought her secret was safe, that's when I'd strike. The night before, I sat alone at the dining table in my own house, folder open in front of me. Page after page of proof, laid out like exhibits in a courtroom. My courtroom. I traced my finger over their names, their lies. My reflection stared back at me in the glossy paper. I didn't see the woman I used to be. Forgiving, trusting, patient. That woman was gone. In her place was someone colder, sharper. I closed the folder, slid it back into my bag, and whispered to the empty room, "Tomorrow." It wasn't rage that filled me. It was precision. Because revenge, done right, isn't fire. It's ice. And I was ready to freeze them in front of everyone who once believed they were untouchable. Sunday dinner felt like a stage. The table was dressed the same as always. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, bowls of green beans, bread warm from the oven. My mother fussed over the dishes. My brother poured drinks. My aunt told stories loud enough to make the kids laugh. To anyone else, it was ordinary, familiar. But to me, it was the arena. Daniel sat across from me, laughing at my brother's joke, his hand brushing Leah's as she reached for the salt. A slip, quick, almost invisible. Almost. My stomach stayed still. I had trained it not to flinch. I let the evening flow. Plates passed, glasses clinked, stories layered over one another. Daniel charmed, Leah smiled, family relaxed. I played my part too, laughing at the right moments, passing bread, filling glasses. The perfect wife, the perfect cousin, until the silence I had been waiting for. It came when dessert was being served. Forks clinked against plates, but the conversation lulled, a rare pause. That was my cue. I pushed my chair back, slow, deliberate. Before we go further, I said, my voice calm but carrying. There's something I need to share. The room hushed instantly. Daniel looked at me, still smiling, but his eyes flickered with the faintest crack of unease. Leah's hand froze around her fork. My mother frowned, her lips parting to ask, but I lifted my hand. Not yet. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Thick, heavy, full of every secret they thought they'd hidden. I laid it gently in the center of the table, beside the breadbasket. Not a slam, a placement. Quiet weapons are the sharpest. Daniel's smile faltered. Jessica, he said, voice low. What are you doing? I opened the folder. The first page was a hotel receipt. Do you recognize this? Leah's face drained of color. My brother leaned in, eyes narrowing. What's this about? I turned the page. Screenshots of text messages, Daniel's words glowing in ink. Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't forget to delete this. Gasps around the table. My aunt covered her mouth. My mother whispered Leah's name like a prayer gone wrong. Leah's hands shook. Jessica, it's not what— Don't! My voice cut through her lie like glass. Not here. Not tonight. Daniel reached across the table, his face twisting between anger and desperation. This is insane. You don't understand. I leaned back, calm, watching him scramble. Oh, I understand. I understand perfectly. I slid another page across the table. Photos. Leah in a hotel mirror, Daniel's reflection blurred behind her. Indisputable. Inescapable. The room erupted. My brother cursed. My aunt pushed her chair back in disgust. My mother's hand trembled against the tablecloth. Leah broke first. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her lips trembling. I didn't mean— Daniel grabbed her wrist under the table, a silent order to shut up. But everyone saw it. The control. The grip. Stop, I said flatly. Stop pretending. Everyone sees you now. The silence that followed was suffocating. Not the silence of ignorance. The silence of revelation. Daniel stood suddenly, the chair screeching against the floor. This is a private matter. We'll handle it outside. But I shook my head. No, you betrayed me in public, Daniel. You betrayed this family in public. So you'll be exposed in public. My brother's fists clenched. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears. Leah sobbed quietly, collapsing into herself. And Daniel burned. His face flushed, his jaw clenched, rage simmering just beneath the surface. This isn't who I am, he said through gritted teeth. You're twisting things. I cut him off. You're exactly who you are, and now everyone knows. I let the evidence sit there, undeniable. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cry. The proof screamed loud enough. Leah finally whispered, I'm sorry. The words hung in the air, fragile, pathetic. My mother turned on her, voice sharp. Sorry? You destroyed your cousin's marriage. You destroyed this family. Leah sobbed harder, hiding her face in her hands. Daniel glared at me, seething, cornered. You think this makes you strong? He hissed. Ruining me? I smiled, cold. No, Daniel. You ruined yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror. The family erupted again, voices overlapping, chairs scraping. My aunt dragged Leah away from the table, muttering that she couldn't stand to look at her. My brother told Daniel to get out before he did something he'd regret. And through it all, I sat still, calm, watching the empire of lies collapse. Daniel tried one last time. He leaned over the table, his voice low, desperate. "We can fix this. Just tell them you misunderstood. Say it was stress. Say it was nothing." I met his eyes, steady. "No, Daniel. This is everything." I gathered the papers back into the folder, tucking them neatly inside. My work was done. The blade had landed. As I stood, I looked at Leah one last time. Her mascara streaked, her body trembling, her world in pieces. And I thought, you wanted him. Now you can have the ruins. Daniel's voice cracked as he shouted after me, but it was drowned out by the chaos of the family unraveling around him. I walked out into the cool night air, calm, steady. Behind me, the life I'd built lay in ashes. But they weren't my ashes. They were his. Hers. And the best part? It wasn't over. Because Daniel thought the humiliation at that table was the worst of it. He hadn't yet seen the final blow I had saved. The silence after an explosion is the loudest sound in the world. That's what I felt walking out of my mother's house that night. Silence that roared. Behind me, voices clashed, chairs scraped, glass broke. My family's world had been ripped apart, and the epicenter was Daniel and Leah. For weeks after, the ripples spread. Daniel tried to reach me. Calls, texts, emails. Long, rambling messages about forgiveness, about moving on, about how what we had was too strong to throw away. His words had no weight anymore. The man who once held my future in his hands couldn't even hold his own narrative together. Leah disappeared from family gatherings. My mother couldn't look at her. My brother refused to speak her name. She became a ghost in the family she once belonged to, cut off, isolated. Her apologies came in shaky texts I never answered. The humiliation didn't stay private. That was the beauty of it. Salt Lake is a small city when it comes to gossip. News spread, a cousin's affair with a husband, evidence laid out at the dinner table. By the time it hit Daniel's office, his trustworthy family man persona had already collapsed. Clients backed away. Partners cut ties. His career crumbled piece by piece until he was left scrambling for scraps, exactly as planned. But that wasn't the final blow. I had saved one last card, one last cut that would bleed him dry. Weeks before the dinner, when I was gathering proof, I found more than just messages and receipts. Hidden among his property documents was a separate bank account, one he thought I'd never see. It wasn't just for the affair. It was where he funneled money, skimming from deals, hiding assets from taxes, from me, from everyone. Fraud, paper trails, illegal transfers. At first, I almost ignored it. My focus had been the affair. But betrayal has a way of sharpening your vision. If he could betray me with Leah, why not with money? Why not in every way? So I collected it. Quietly, carefully. And the night after the dinner, while Daniel still reeled from the collapse of his reputation, I forwarded it all. Bank statements, account numbers, receipts. Straight to his firm's senior partners, and to the IRS. The call came 2 weeks later. His voice shook when he told me. Investigations, audits. His license suspended pending review. His empire, gone. Leah may have taken my husband, but I had taken his life's work. That was the final twist. The affair destroyed his reputation. The fraud destroyed his future. I didn't need to raise my voice, didn't need to throw a punch. I simply placed the truth where it belonged and let it burn through everything he'd built. The aftermath wasn't clean. Revenge never is. My family still carries scars. My mother's smile is thinner now. My brother watches people more closely. Trust, once broken, doesn't return whole. But for me, there was clarity. I didn't walk away healed. I walked away victorious. because betrayal demands consequence. And I delivered it. Daniel lost his career. Leah lost her family. Together, they lost the illusion that they were untouchable. And me? I didn't lose anything. I shed it.